everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing Battle of the Beauty Sponges, and I am super excited because these are both sponges that I love. One of them is super hyped up. One of them I feel like not a lot of people know about, but we're going to figure out which one's better, if there is one that is better. So the first one that we are testing is the Beauty Blender. I'm going to be using that on the right side of my face. And then the second one is this one from AOA Studios. It is a $1 sponge, and that's going to be on the left side of my face. Hey you guys, before I start this video, I do have a really quick side note for you guys. So I do want to say that all throughout this video, I did try and keep the bias out of it, but I do have a personal bias when it comes to the two sponges that I'm comparing, just because of what the companies stand for. So the AOA Studio Wonder Blender, they donate a portion of the proceeds to fighting against animal cruelty, which, you know, I support anything that helps our environment. I love animals, things like that. I support all of it on this channel. And when it comes to Beauty Blender, I really don't support them as a brand as a whole, because they don't treat their customers properly. They have attacked customers in the past, saying that it's kind of like when you think about tissues and how we all call tissues Kleenex. If anybody calls a different sponge a Beauty Blender as a brand will go and attack those people, saying that that's not a Beauty Blender because it doesn't work as well. And I think that that's very unprofessional, and I really don't appreciate how they've treated customers in the past. And I also will say that when they came out with their foundation line, I was personally offended. And even though I know that I probably could have found a shade of foundation that worked for me in that line, I know that there are a lot of people that couldn't have. And so, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement that's happening right now, I really don't think that we should be supporting a brand that is clearly racist, even if they won't say it out loud. So that's where I stand on that. I do have a personal bias when it comes to these sponges, but I did try and keep it out of this video. Anyways, thank you guys if you're watching and if you continue watching. Before I start, I did want to compare wet and dry. So for the Beauty Blender, this is what it looks like dry, this is what it looks like when it's expanded, so it gets about double the size. And then for the AOA sponge, we have, this is what it looks like wet and dry, so again, expands about double the size. I do want to say as well, the Beauty Blender is naturally a bit smaller, so keep that in mind. It takes a little bit longer, not much, but it does take slightly longer for me to blend out foundation with the Beauty Blender, just for that reason. It's naturally a little bit smaller. And then another thing you'll notice is the shape is different. So for this one, it does come in this like typical egg type of a shape. I find that I like this shape better for a sponge, so that's something to keep in mind as well. I kind of wish that the Beauty Blender would make this shape of a sponge. So I'm going to start off by priming my skin. I'm using the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Primer just because this is a primer that I know works well on my skin no matter what I'm using. Now that my face is primed for foundation today, we're going to be using the Pure 4-in-1 Love Your Selfie Foundation. This is one that I like to use when I'm testing out application tools because I know exactly how much to use. So I'm going to go in with one pump on each half of my face. So like I said, the right half of my face is going to be blended out with the Beauty Blender. This one, whenever I'm blending out large surfaces, I use the like rounded edge of this. And I will say that it's not my favorite shape just because I find that it's harder to hold than the other sponge that I have. When it comes to the density of this sponge, it is very porous and bouncy when it's wet. So it blends things out really evenly, very seamlessly, and that is really nice. So for the left half of my face, I'm using this flat edge of the AOA sponge. This sponge has a little bit denser of a material. It's not quite as bouncy, but it is still super soft. You don't feel like you're beating your skin with a rock or anything. It is still really nice and like squishy. So that is something to definitely look for in a sponge. And also, since this flat size has a larger surface area, it blends out your foundation a lot quicker than the Beauty Blender does. So just looking at how foundation applied, I think that they applied relatively the same. However, I will say I feel like the Beauty Blender soaks up a little bit more product. You can see that they're both really, really dirty after doing foundation, but since the Beauty Blender is so porous, I feel like it soaks up a little bit more of that product, and I have a bit more full coverage on this side than I do on this side. Also, the AOA sponge almost feels like it's coated in something. I can't put my finger on it, but it's really almost not porous at all. It's just really nice and soft, and it almost feels like it's coated in like a silicone slippery material so as it doesn't soak up that product, and it gives you a bit more of a full coverage finish. So the next test for any beauty sponge is concealer. Today I'm going in with the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind Concealer, and I'm just doing that under my eyes so that we can see how the pointed tip of each beauty sponge works. When it comes to the Beauty Blender, I feel like it has a really nice small point so you can really get up in there, which is super, super nice. And then when it comes to the AOA sponge, the tip is a little bit wider, but you can still get into any small areas that you need to. So the last test that I have for these is powder, and I'm using the Coty Airspun powder, and I'm just gonna bake underneath the eyes. So now I'm gonna let this sit for a while, and then I'm gonna finish up the rest of my makeup. But as far as baking goes, the Beauty Blender sponge does pick up and place down the powder really nicely. I will say that that tip, like I said, it really gets up in there, but this sponge picks up the powder and places it nicely as well, and I think that this flat edge is really beneficial if you want to bake under the eyes, and especially if you want to bake right here, because you can really tell that you're getting a straight line. But right now it's a toss-up. I'm going to finish the rest of my makeup, and I'll be back with you guys with my final thoughts. So the rest of my makeup is on, you guys, and honestly, I can't even tell a difference that my skin was done with two different Beauty Blenders or sponges. Can you? Because I can't. So my final thoughts are, this one, like I said, a little bit more dense, has a little bit of a different texture. This one a lot more porous. It has a little bit more of a bounce to it. But when you have a sponge that's this good for literally a 20th of the price, I don't understand why you would go out and spend $20 on a sponge. That's all that I really have to say about that. I really don't understand why you would spend so much money on a sponge when this is $1 and it's just as good, in my personal opinion. So I will have both sponges linked down below. I guess the only downside is this one you can only get online, but if that's not a problem, then I really recommend that you get this one over the Beauty Blender. So like I said, both will be linked in the description box, and that is my final thoughts on both of those sponges. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. It really helps me out. If you would like to watch my last video, you can go ahead and do that right over here. And if you would like to subscribe to my channel, which I urge you all to do, it also helps me out tremendously, and I celebrate a little bit. I do a little dance. But you can go ahead and click right over here, or hit that big red button down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, guys.